QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Populate invoice using billable item connected to bill and purchase order. In other words, we will create an invoice, we will create that invoice and populate it using the information we used to populate a bill in the past with the use of the billable item feature. We populated that bill with the use of a purchase order or connecting to the purchase order in a prior data input screen from that. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars practice file homepage. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown and selecting the open windows list. We're going to be creating an invoice. We're going to be populating that invoice with the billable items feature that was used when we created a bill in the past. So in other words, let's recap the process we had. We entered a purchase order in the past a few presentations back, and the purchase order, you'll recall, doesn't have anything with regards to a transaction on the financial statements, no effect, in other words, on the balance sheet or the income statement, but is an informational form that we can then link to the bill, and we did link to the bill, populating the bill with the purchase order once we have received it. The one we're taking a look at, if we select this purchase order, I'm going to go back in it so we can see the purchase order that we had. So I'm going to go open the purchase order, use the back arrow, and we have this item where we purchased the Fender, the new Fender, and we had the 20 units that we were to purchase for this customer, the new music stuff. And then we received it in the future, and that's what this receive in full means. I'm going to close this back out. We then recorded a bill using this item, opening up the bill, and I'm going to go back to the prior bill. We have this bill for Fender that we have received this item, the item down here, there's the 20 items. We populated this bill with the use of the purchase order, helping us to link it, and we recorded down here the customer that's been following along. Notice that this customer has nothing to do with the purchase side of things, meaning the vendor doesn't need to know the customer we're purchasing these guitars for, but it's useful for us to tag on the customer section as we go through the purchase process, because it will then be used when we go through the sales process, helping us to populate these sales forms. And that's going to be helped by the customer name and the item here being billable. We check it off as billable. That'll help us to populate now what we'll do, the invoice. So closing this back out, we're then going to go to the invoice down below. So we're going to be opening up our invoice. We're saying that the scenario goes, we had somebody that wants these guitars. We then said, okay, we'll go to our vendor, Fender, ask for those guitars with a purchase order. Once we got them, then we got them later, right? And we recorded the bill related to those guitars that we ordered with the purchase order. And now that we have them, we're going to the customer and saying, hey, now we've got these guitars. We're going to invoice you for the guitars that you requested in the past, and linking this whole thing through. Now we're on the sales side of things, the sales cycle. So we're looking for that music stuff store, I think it was, or no, it was new music stuff, new music stuff. That's the one we want, new music stuff. And then it's going to say that this little pop-up pops up and says, hey, we've got a billable item. Select the outstanding billable time and costs to add to this invoice. Do you want to do that? And we're going to say, yes, we want to do that. And then it's going to give us these tabs. Now we're looking for the item tab to the right, the item tab representing inventory items. So here is going to be the item. Notice I'll check this off and then say, okay. And there we have it. So now we have our items that are populating. Notice that it is able to pick up basically the sales side of things, even though we had the bill, which we paid for the cost side of things. In other words, if I was to go to the lists drop down just to check this item out and go to the item list and then take a look at our Squire, the Squire that we have, the SQ Squire, right click on that item and edit that item just to take a look at the detail within it. We see the cost is at the $168. That's what we paid for them. The sales price is the $244. So it's able to pull over the $244, closing this back out as we populate our invoice. And there we have it. So if we go through this, then it's going to be the standard invoice process. So we always want to ask the question in terms of the invoice. And let's change the date up top. We're actually going to record this as of, let's say, the 19th. Okay, let's go through our standard invoice process. This is the same at this point in time. We're going to say, what's an invoice going to do? Well, it's an invoice. That means it's going to increase the accounts receivable by the full amount, the $5,124. The other side's going to go to sales, but it's only going to be for the amount we charge, which is $4,880. The difference being the sales tax is going to be going to a payable account, sales tax payable or something of that nature of the 244. We also know that the inventory is going to go down, not by the amount shown on the invoice because we don't want to show it to the customer, but by an amount driven that we just saw on the item. The item's going to help us to record that on a perpetual basis system. The other side of that is going to be on the cost of goods sold, an expense account representing us consuming the inventory, consuming an asset in order to generate revenue. We also know that the subledgers are going to go down for the quantity of inventory. So inventory subledger is going to go down, as well as the subledger for the receivable, showing that this customer by customer owes us the money of the $5,124. Let's save it, check it out. Save it and close it. First, I'm going to close this and uncheck this mail thing, and then save and close. Save and close again. And then let's go to our reports. Reports drop down. We're going to go to the company and financial and go to the balance sheet. In the balance sheet, I'm going to go to the custom reports up top and then change the dates from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21, January through December 2021, and OK. We go into our receivables. Taking a look at those receivables, we see at the bottom there is our new invoice. Double clicking on that item, here is our invoice total amount for that $5,124. Closing that out, the other side of it will be on the income statement or profit and loss. Let's close this out too. And I'm going to go to the reports drop down, company and financial, P&L, profit and loss, income statement, going from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21. There we have it. Let's go into the sales item up top, and there is the music, the new music stuff, the Squier guitars we got. Double clicking on that. And there we have our information. Notice here we have it for the amount before the sales tax, which is the 4880. Closing this back out. There it is here. Closing this back out. The difference between the two, sales tax on the balance sheet, back to the balance sheet in the home in the open windows within the balance sheet. We then scroll down to the liabilities section. We got that sales tax that we had to record here because the government makes us collect their taxes. They make us just be their collector of taxes, and it's going to be down here at the 244. So there's the 244 that we had to collect, and we're going to have to pay it to them. Wish they'd collect their own taxes, but whatever. Closing this back out, and then we also note that on the inventory is going to be going down. So if I double click on the inventory up top, we see that we have that 3360 going down on the inventory. Double clicking on that, we don't see that 3360 on the invoice anywhere. Why? Because we don't want to show it to the customer, but it knows about it because of this item, and we set it up in the item so it knows the price and can record it on a perpetual system with the inventory item. Closing that back out and closing this back out. The other side of that is on the P&L, profit and loss, income statement, back to there. In the cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold, the expense of us consuming an asset, that asset being the inventory. There's that 3360 once again. Closing this back out. Let's go back to the balance sheet. We also note that there's going to be a subledger related to the accounts receivable. Accounts receivable subledger. So let's open that up. Reports, that's changed. So we'll check it out. That'll be fun. Customers and receivables. We want to go to the customer balance detail here. Customer balance detail. And this was the new music stuff. There's that invoice once again, the $5,124 for the full amount that they owe us. And the total amount of the receivables now at the $13,834.7 on the register. That should match what's on the balance sheet, as it does. And so that is good. We also know that the inventory was affected. Inventory went down. Let's check out the inventory subledger report. Reports drop down. We're going to go to the inventory report down here in the inventory section. And we want to look at the inventory valuation summary. That's the one I'll take a look at. Changing the dates to 12/31/21. And we see that the total on the cost side of things, not the retail price, that's what we're going to sell them for. The cost side of things is now at the $1,248. And we sold an Epiphone Standard, Epiphone Standard Pro. Is that what we sold? No, I think we sold a, let me check what we sold just to check this out. We're going to go to the accounts receivable and go down to the music stuff store. We sold the Squiers. That's right. Those were the new ones. So if I go to the inventory, now the Squiers are down to 0. Those are now gone. So that makes sense because we sold all of them at that point. So that now we're at the $1,248. And if we go to the balance sheet, then we see the inventory at the 1,248. So if you want to just review your numbers, if you're following along, here's where we are at in terms of the balance sheet. So you can check your numbers out there. You can check your numbers out at the profit and loss, or on the profit and loss, or compared to my profit and loss, or this profit and loss here. If you want to take a look at the trial balance, which I think is the easiest one to look at and compare numbers for, accounting and taxes, trial balance, changing the dates up top from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21. Here's where we stand in terms of the trial balance.